Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Eye on the Eagles, your all-access pass to all things Avila Athletics. I'm Sports Information Director Tim Hackett. Leading off the show for the first time this year is head softball coach Charlie Kennedy. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here. I know you are always extremely busy. We're out of season. We're only about 8 weeks, 10 weeks out from the start of the next softball season, but I realize that doesn't mean there's any downtime for you. You are, I think, the definition of jet setter. You are always going somewhere, always doing something, and it's not like it's just a joyride. You are very dedicated, driven, diligent, all the stuff, trying to continue to build this team and build this program for the future. But I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we get into that, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't start off this show by talking about just all the success that you and your team had this past year. It was year 2 for you here at Avila, and did some stuff that this team has never done or hasn't done in a few years. So how would you sum up this past spring season now that you're about 5-6 months removed from it?
You know, it's difficult, Tim, to take a team where we had 14 players at the end of the year, my first year here, and bring back 7 and then bring in 19 new. We didn't have the expectation to make postseason last year for nationals, but we did expect to compete in the conference tournament. So, you know, the excitement of what happened at the end of the year for everyone to come together and to be one band, one sound, which is what I preach to them the most, and to have the success that we had in the conference tournament, to where we were a surprise team, upsetting numerous ranked teams ahead of us. You know, all those things come from hard work, dedication, commitment. And I think the strength of the schedule early in the year last year to go down to Florida and play some really great teams early on and to test our mettle is what we want to do every year. And so we've kind of scheduled that way this year as well. But just an outstanding finish overall. When you look at the academic success of the team, can't be more proud of our girls to have 26 players and have 16 of them academic All-Americans, 3.5 or better, and to have our team GPA be at 3.627. So those are the things that you build from with the blocks. You know, we had some good recognition of our players at the end of the year individually, but you know, just an outstanding finish to the year.
I think just really it kind of one thing after another in terms of all of those. I don't want to say history because it's not like it had never happened before, and it had only been a couple of years since Avila softball had been in the NAIA tournament. But this is really, you and I have talked about this, and I've talked about this both on publicly on broadcasts and otherwise. But this is really, you know, let's leave dance aside for the moment, but this is really the program here in a lot of respects, and you have brought it back to that eminence that it has been before. Not every team here has been to multiple NAIA tournaments. This program has, but it had been a few years since, so you got them back there in just year 2 after a lot of roster turnover, after having such a small team the year before, like you mentioned. So, I mean, what do you think that signifies, and where do you think is the expectation now going forward?
You know, our kids are excited about where we are, and there's never a downtime for us. And you know, we've got an outstanding coaching staff with Alden Wildy and Mike McFarland and Mimi Maggard. Those are just huge components that you just don't find in every program. And to have 2 of those be part-time staff members, where we really bend our schedule around when they're available. So our kids make a lot of commitment, a lot of sacrifice to do 5 a.m. workouts and 6 a.m. workouts on whatever day it's available to get our pitching in, to get our hitting in. You know, the manipulation of having one facility outside with football and soccer in the fall, and to have off-site practices and those things. There's just a lot of things that have to come together, and there has to be buy-in. And I think right now that's what we have going for us right now is the best buy-in we've had since I've been here. So I tell our kids it's like putting your chips on the table and putting them all in the middle, and let's play for keeps. You know, we had a great dinner last night as a group for Thanksgiving to celebrate our family. As a softball program here, and you could just tell the focus of our kids right now, because it's almost time for those semester exams to hit and for us to go home and be with our families for 3.5 to 4 weeks, and then get back here and practices the first day, January the 8th, first game February 9th. So I just attribute it to the commitment of our players. And, you know, when I look back on this as well, there hadn't been an alumni game in 5 years. There hadn't been camps hosted by Avila softball. Those things have now put us back on the map, where coaches, when you come out to see them, go, man, it's the first time I've seen an Avila coach in a while out recruiting. So, you know, the local thing was difficult for me when I first got here, because you're competing against Baker and Central Methodist and Benedictine, whoever else in the area for kids. I went about it a different way. We went and got kids from across the country, and now kids from local are looking closer at us because of the success. So just been really fortunate. I think Avila's a great place. I think we're a hidden gem. I think when you can make comparisons of cost, we're not more expensive than most. We're right there blended in the middle. But I think the academic success we're having right now is because our kids are specific to a degree program, and we have some great degree programs here for a small school. I think the movement this past year to go from 222 freshman class a year ago to 495 this year, to see our freshman experience courses blow up, and to have so many bright faces in the program this year.
That's awesome.
Coming from all over the country. So those things are just exciting points for us to emphasize. So I congrats to everybody in administration, from Dr. Berkey on down, about what we've done to move this forward and to show the strength of this university. But those things have been benefits for me as well. When you go out there recruiting, I've just been fortunate to have a lot of relationships with people that keep bringing me back to work at camp, a clinic, and recruit for the weekend and pay for most of my expenses to do it. But when we're doing it, it's the name on the front, more important name on the back.
Sure.
And I'm out there marketing Avila. And, so I've just been really fortunate. I've been blessed.
Where can you sum up in a few minutes where you have been so far this summer since the season ended? And we were in Chickasha, Oklahoma for the NAI opening round. And then it never really ends, you were saying before. The preparation for the season is kind of an eternal process, really. So since we were in Oklahoma in May to get to this point here at Tanner's in mid-November, where have you been?
The week started first weekend in June to go to Las Vegas and do a work, and then go to Pasco, Washington the following weekend. And then I was in California. I was in Hawaii this fall. I've been to Pasco, Washington again this fall. I've been to Vegas again this fall. Made trips to St. Louis, to Chicago. I'm going where we're getting kids from.
Sure. And
we've had good success. 2 kids we have from Pasco, from Nampa, Idaho, and Blackfoot, Idaho, are from my trips to Pasco, Washington. We've now got 4 kids from California in the program, but I've been out to California many times in the last few years. We're making a trip south to Texas this year because we have 3 sophomores and a senior from Texas. So, just fortunate in my 23 years before getting here as a head coach to build relationships with coaches that I never lost. And I call that generational recruiting, where no matter who we talked about the first year I met you, if it just didn't quite work out and they didn't quite do the work, I didn't throw away the relationship. A year later, it was a second generational conversation, then the third year, and then the fourth year. So it's taken some time. I mean, Stephanie Hayes is a product of a 25-year relationship with a coach out of Chicago, Illinois, from New Atlantic Lightning, and he and I have been best of friends. But his program sends kids to Division I's left and right, and it just so happens that we were fortunate to get a kid that's talented and to come our direction. So, when you look at our program right now, the depth of our program, the experience of the players that are coming, the levels that they could have played, but they chose this level because maybe they can really focus on their academic success and enjoy softball.
Sure.
And be part of a great program. So those are challenges. When our coaches talk to our players, and if there's a frustration at some point, where would you rather be? Playing every day in a program that's not as good, or competing for your spot in a program that's going to be unbelievable? Because that's where we're looking towards. So we're 2 wins from the World Series a year ago, and that's our focus right now, is to get to the World Series. And none of that's easy, But fortunately for all of us at the NAI level, the committee voted last year, and as a body of NAI head coaches, we chose to put forth 48 members going to postseason instead of 40.
Yep.
And it was passed by administration. So this year there's going to be 8 additional at large. That gives 16 at large across the country. So that means the KCAC has 2 automatic bids and a chance at a 3rd team getting in.
Yep. Well,
that's huge for our conference. So we've talked as head coaches in the conference about the importance of strength of schedule, about the importance of wins against good teams that are nationally ranked, so that we can be looked at as a conference that needs that 3rd or 4th team added.
How important is that for your sport specifically? Because we've heard about that mentality, that mindset on this show, even since we've just had it this fall. The idea of scheduling up, if you will, or at least scheduling other really good teams, if you consider yourselves on that plane, rather than scheduling down and scheduling a bunch of teams that you not only should win against, but should expect to win against and expect to win big. So we've heard that from a lot of our coaches this year. I feel more than I've heard before in my time here at Avila about the value of scheduling good teams or really good teams, or scheduling up maybe some NCAA schools, whatever the case might be. So how important, how relevant is that, do you think, for softball at this level?
It's a major focus. I know that the coaches within our conference know the importance of it. We've not been looked at as a strong conference in softball. We've had some individual teams that have had continual success, but our conference needs to be looked at more as a conference to compete against. And I know that our new commissioner for the conference, who we're meeting with today, is excited about where this conference is going and how to get us more recognizable out there. I've looked at us as being a redheaded stepchild. People don't know enough about this conference, and it's looked at that way. Being an All-American Committee member, it's looked at that way when we're voting on their players, because the KCAC doesn't play that strength of schedule or isn't recognizable. So I think it matters in every aspect of what we're doing. But this year in particular, with it going to 48 teams, it's going to be a big factor for those teams that are selected at large once the 2 automatic bids are taken in every conference nationwide.
It's been a couple of months since you've played games that count, but it's not like you haven't been doing anything softball-wise over the last couple of months, even around here. I think I counted about 7 or so states that you hit this summer, and just in your travels, counting Kansas and Missouri. But talking about here locally, there's still a lot of things that go on in the off-season in fall, more so than I think many of us that are outside of this territory that aren't coaches or players, more so than we realize. So what was the fall season for you guys like, and what is that how do you take what you learn and what you experience at this time of year and turn it into success and preparation for February?
So we've got a mandated 24 weeks for the year. I use 8 of them in the fall. I've gone about it a little bit differently every year that I've gotten older, where I try to take a little less softball emphasis and put a little more emphasis into the academic side. So we were probably 3 days a week of practice, 1 day a week of a scrimmage or a non-traditional opponent in uniform. But we used the month of September for our team, where we did practices and games. And when September ended, we were 2 weeks of individual player meetings with our coaching staff to talk about their individual strength, individual weakness. And then we came right back mid-October to mid-November, and we started individual skill development in smaller groups of 2, 3, or 4. And a lot of coaches do those two things opposite. They do their individual, then they do their team. I'm earlier because I recruit a lot in October and November, and I'm not here for those weekend dates in which we would have played games in October. So we do it in September for that purpose, to get our team out of the way. But it still gives us great opportunities for our pitching, our hitting, and our individual defense drills and those things mid-October, mid-November. And right now we're in kind of a dead period where they're getting their own work in. We're just 2 weeks away from semester exams and everybody going home December 8th. So, the fundraising part of it goes from start to finish. It goes from the day we walk onto campus till the time we put our cleats on and play our first game.
No kidding.
So that's a never ending. We've got 2 great trips this year that we'll talk more about. But, I think the most enjoyable part during the fall is when there's home football games and we get to, relax as a family on a Saturday and support our football program and cook out on the field and have everybody stop by and find out what Coach K is cooking today. So in the meantime, I've been around a lot more this fall in September because there were 3 home dates in September that I could also be here for. But once October and November get here, I'm never here when it comes to weekend football. So, I've just been fortunate with how the calendar worked out this year for what we've been doing. But, we're excited about what's around the corner for us, because we realize we have some great talent returning. And even though we lost some great talent from last year's team, we're a team to be reckoned with.
And even on one of those football days, you got to kind of bring a lot of those players from last season back, kind of as really a final bookend, I should say, to last season. It was a few months removed, but had just about every member, including all the coaches, back from last season's team that won the KCAC tournament and got to the NAIA tournament, as we talked about. What was that experience like for you and for the girls to kind of put a bow on everything that you guys achieved this past year?
Our 4 seniors from last year helped us with the coaching staff design a ring to represent the season and the outcome of it. And the players hadn't seen it yet. So as it came in, I kept it quiet. And then eventually we announced the date that we were going to do it and worked around what the home game schedule would look like for football. But what a great day. The weather was outstanding. We had a chance to bring our kids over and put them out there on showcase in front of the crowd that was there, and it was a nice crowd on hand. But to recognize 16 academic All-Americans and a 3.627 team GPA, to recognize the kids that made all conference for us, And then the individual success that we had with Chelsea Kurt's season last year and 72 stolen bases, and we're just fortunate to have that kind of a talent coming back this year as the go-to in the top of the order. But the excitement was just outstanding. The players really enjoyed getting a chance to be recognized, and it's one of those things that there's a little bit of luster lost when the season's ending and the school year's over, and they don't really get to see us come back from nationals. There's not a parade waiting for you.
Sure.
So our parade was in September at the home football game, and it was just a great experience.
I've thought about that too, even at higher levels. Thinking about College World Series for NCAA, which runs into June, which is a month after most of those schools have final exams, which is just it feels annoying for those players and coaches, yeah, but then also, like you said, there's nobody still in those schools besides those players, baseball and softball, and then maybe, some out, like track and field, swim, things like that. But aside from that, no one else is there, so it does feel like it's not an afterthought necessarily, but it's just how the schedule works, that no one else in those schools besides those athletes, those coaches, and those staff people. So it is weird. We were a little bit closer to the end of the real semester at our level, but still we were right at the end of the semester when we were in Oklahoma this past May. So it's just a really weird timing of it. And, this is the opportunity then, I guess, to actually formally recognize everything that you and your team accomplished, because there was a lot.
I'm going to tell you this. In the 5 coaching experiences that I've had, the thing I'll take most from last spring won't be the wins. It'll be while we were competing, our head coaches were watching, and they were all in the conference room, and they were all texting me, and the admissions office was texting me, man, coach, it was a great game. Congrats on the win today. I mean, I've experienced a lot in my coaching career. I hadn't experienced anybody on campus paying attention, and really that was just how close a family we are here. So that was just a great experience to have our coaches involved in the run that we had as well.
That's awesome. What are you guys, really quickly, I guess, what are you looking forward to once the actual season comes around in February? It's something that you have mentioned before, and something that you have, I think, made a priority for this team is having those trips, playing those really good teams, perhaps teams that we don't ever see. We were talking with bowling coach Paul Wolf on the show last week about how unique his sport is, how unique his team is, in the sense that you get to see a bunch of schools that we never see in any other sport, and wrestling is that way as well. But you guys are really, if you consider the true, typical team sports, you guys are the best example of that as well, because we competed against teams last year that never compete against in any other sport. It's not a design necessarily, but you went to Florida, saw Southeastern, saw Coastal Georgia, just to name 2. So what are some of the approaches for this coming spring? What are you looking forward to?
We start out the 9th and 10th of February down in San Antonio, Texas. And, all of this for me stems from, if you're recruited by me, my goal is to put you in front of your families one time in your 4-year career.
That's great.
Well, we have a senior, Kazem Wood, from Texas, and 3 sophomores from down there. So us getting down to Texas near their families, I mean, Maya Richards said last night at the team Thanksgiving that it's going to be so unique to play a bunch of her former teammates in different uniforms at Texas A&M, San Antonio, and at Our Lady of the Lake. So it's really unique that we're getting to go somewhere where it's close to home for our families. And, so that's our first trip, the 9th and 10th. We'll play 2 really good teams. One of them has a first-team All-American pitcher. Going out to California 1 month later to go out there and play Vanguard and Menlo and Westcliff and Hope International. Hope International has a first-team All-American pitcher from last season as well. But that's Julia Douglas and her family as a senior being able to go close to home. And then 3 of our other players that are it's 2 sophomores and a freshman. So getting a chance to go the direction of our kids. Going towards Florida last year was getting down towards Dalton, Georgia, and where Brooke Bellflower is from. So, we've got to make a trip to Chicago sometime in the next year and out towards Idaho. But I want to take our kids closer to their families and play great teams and test our mettle. And, mental toughness is everything about this game. When we're at practice, I preach to them about the last 15 minutes of practice every day is the 7th inning. It's getting those last 3 outs. It's securing the win. It's not letting anybody think differently about this is your game, it's our game. So, I'm trying to teach them life lessons. There's nothing that we're doing in softball right now that's directly related to softball. It's directly related to life lessons and all the obstacles you overcome. So every time I put them in the game, it's the game of life that I'm putting them in. And so, I think my kids are excited about the spring. It's going to be a lot of work getting there, but for the meantime, there's some great things that we took from a 9-day trip to Florida last year, and the team bonding and cooking meals together, and and just enjoying each other's company and not having to rush to get to class in between practice of the game. So it's time that we get to spend.
Really just get to focus on that specifically. I love the idea of, not the idea, but the concept of finishing practice strong, because that, and I think in that situation you get to see, you're looking at the clock, whether literally or metaphorically, thinking, all right, I got 15 minutes left in practice. We're almost done. I can kind of breathe easy a little bit. Finish line is in sight. But to use that metaphor a little bit more, if the finish line is in sight, if you're running a race of whatever kind, that's when you have to sprint the hardest. So it is really easy, and I can certainly relate to this, to kind of ease off as the day goes on, or as the year goes on, or as your career goes on, as the case might be. But that's really the opposite approach that you need to have to be successful, because in the seventh inning, obviously, is when it's most important. So that's when you have to work the hardest. That's when you have to make sure that you've got the highest effort to either score the runs that you need to make up the difference, or to hold off the other team from scoring up to make the difference. So I think that is a really important mindset to have, that, like you said, translates into not just softball, but into the real world as well.
Tim, we don't want to let this point go away either. Tim, you do an amazing job covering us in softball, and your department, for Darian, for Jackson, for those guys that helped us throughout the year last year as broadcasters. Our families truly, they enjoyed every minute of that. When Julie's back in St. Louis listening in, she's like, man, I can tell when Tim's on the broadcast, because he just gives you a visualization of everything that's going on right as it's going on. And those are just key things. For all the years I did this, coaching for a long time is one thing. Having it be visual for your families, because my families are now from across the country.
Absolutely.
You're in the homes of so many of my family members that you're a family member, brother.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. And thank you to all of your players and your fans and your friends and everybody else for tuning in, for the support. It really means a lot. It is Thanksgiving week around here, so there's a lot of things to be thankful for, a lot of people to be thankful for. We'll hit that at the end of the show. But for now, we're going to thank you, Coach Charlie Kennedy, for joining us for the first time, not the last time, on Eye on the Eagles this year. But thank you for being here. Much appreciated.
It was a great time. Thanks for having me.
We are looking forward to the start of softball for real in a couple of months. It begins in early February, less than 10 weeks from now. That's head softball coach Charlie Kennedy. This is Eye on the Eagles. We'll be right back with our next coach. Welcome back to the latest episode of Eye on the Eagles. I'm Sports Information Director Tim Hackett, joined now by head women's wrestling coach Zach Revier. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Thanks for having me, as always.
Thank you for being here, as always. I know it is a busy time of year for you guys, especially with all of the, bonus stuff that you've been adding into the team schedule this year with your hands-on work with Ukraine. I know that it's been a busy last month or so. Before we talk about that, let's talk, about the actual competitions. We'll flash back a couple of weeks ago to the Falcon Invite hosted by Friends, first open event of the year for you guys. And, always a huge event in terms of just the number of teams competing, athletes coming in from all over the place. What are your thoughts about your first big event of the year?
Yeah, it was our first open tournament of the year, so kind of get that tournament feel out of the way. As always, a pretty tough tournament. But yeah, it was pretty good. We came home with 3 placers that day, highlighted by Sarah Salarstrani. She made the finals and lost to a conference fall in the finals. So we'll see her again sometime throughout the year, I'm sure. So we're looking forward for that matchup. But she had a heck of a tournament to get to that point in the first place. She had a nationally ranked win. She's not just a win, but she shot the girl out 10-0. So super proud with her performance out there. And then also at down at the first couple weight classes, had a couple other places get third. Aisha Pearson, she got third in her first ever college wrestling tournament, so that was exciting. And she kind of highlighted her weekend by beating a familiar foe that she lost to 4 or 5 times in high school. So to kind of get over that hump and move past that was great.
That's a really cool storyline.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it. She was a little nervous going into the match, but after it was a great moment for both of us. And then Markela Lottie, she also got third. So first year we had any placers there, and we come home with 3 of them. So I was super excited with that. There's a lot of our conference teams were there, so it was nice to see them early in the year, see where we're at compared to where they are right now. But again, we'll still see them many times throughout this year as well.
This is going to sound like a dumb question, so please give me some grace on it and see if you can understand what I'm really meaning by it. I understand, obviously, that there is a difference between duels and opens or tournaments. There's obviously a lot of fundamental differences, but you said, it's important to just get the first tournament, experience, atmosphere out of the way. So what concretely are the differences for yourselves and more specifically for the athletes in those open events like the Falcon compared to the previous week when you just had the single duel against William Wood? So obviously I realize there's specific differences in how things work, and it's a much longer day. You're going to be wrestling a lot more matches if you do well, but aside from that, what is so different about those days that is important to get that experience in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So these first couple ones specifically that we went to, tough, good competition. So that's one good thing. Another thing, especially the first one, both of them, just the venue size alone, right? At the Falcon, we're out in the Hartman Arena in Park City, Kansas. The venue is bigger than the venue for our national tournament. There was 13 mats there, I believe, so more mats than our national tournament. So we kind of get the lights out of the way, get those things out of the way. But yeah, as you alluded to, it's a lot busier, a lot more time consuming than the standalone duels. We're up at the tournament about 6 o'clock, 5:30, something like that in the morning, and leaving about 6, 7 o'clock at night. So it's a long, taxing day. But the beauty about it is if momentum's going your way, the matches get tougher, they get more competitive throughout the day. So you really get to build it into those tough matches. So that's a nice context. A duel, you could have number 1 in the country right off the bat, which there's nothing wrong with that. But typically you kind of want to see those people later in the day as you kind of work out some of those things. But yeah, both of those tournaments, the Falcon and the Missouri Valley that we're at this weekend, again, both tough tournaments. Venues, again, same size or even bigger than a national tournament. So now we're used to that. We're a young team. We got a lot of freshmen on the team this year. So to present those opportunities and to get those experiences out of the way early in the year, I think is important. So because now we're used to that, and we know what we need to work on moving forward from these experiences.
When you say bigger tournament, it's just total number of athletes. There are more athletes at those events than there will be at the national tournament come March or whatever, right? Like there's just physically more people there, so it's a bigger field. Is that what you mean by bigger?
Yes, in that context, and just venue size in its entirety. The venue's bigger, more mats, that type of thing. I think Falcon, there's about 120 women on the women's side, so a little bit smaller number size than our national tournament. But Missouri Valley this weekend, I believe there's just right around 750 athletes, so certainly bigger than our national tournament. I believe there's 210 this year for our national tournament. So yeah, about 3 times the size of our national tournament, and then everyone is there. All divisions are there, and even some past college graduates as well. Girls trying to make the world team, the Olympic team coming up this year. A couple of those were there as well this year.
At the Missouri Valley.
Yep.
So that's just kind of, we'll get it. Let's go to that then, I guess, because I feel as if I kind of default to saying this all the time for both men's and women's wrestling. We say, all right, big event this week, elite competition, a large field. I feel like that's largely true about everything, but that, I think, doesn't really begin to cover this tournament specifically. So can you explain to us, first of all, just, I guess, is that accurate about the Missouri Valley Open Field compared to the Falcon and compared to anything else that you're going to be competing in? You described it as the toughest tournament in the sport.
Yeah, definitely. It's respected as one of the most prestigious college women's tournament in the country. The returning NAI national championship team was there. Southern Oregon was there. Iowa had their fully represented team there this year. They ended up winning 6 of the 11 weight classes. But a bunch of the top 10 NAI teams, the Division One, half of the Division One teams were there this weekend. A bunch of the top level Division II teams are there. Some top level junior colleges were there as well. So yeah, mostly anyone and everyone is out there. There were some other competitions going on in the East and the West Coast, so some of those teams weren't here. But wrestling's pretty heavy here in the Midwest, so there's a lot of good competition here for certain. A lot of people that either have been or will be on world or Olympic teams by the time they're done competing. We're out at Missouri Valley this weekend competing.
That's pretty great. There were 30 total teams, 30 total colleges that were on the roster.
There was actually 52 teams.
Was there really?
52 teams there. As a team collectively, we're the team with the 15 most spins out of those 52 teams. We got 10 as a team, so we're scoring good points and getting in competitive matches with some of these top level talents. So I was super impressed and happy with that. But yeah, lots of teams there, lots of good quality competition as well.
And it's kind of run like the national tournament in the sense that it's a 2-day event. It's built to be a 2-day event, and essentially anybody who's competing on day 2 are the people that are the deepest in their brackets. It's not just the first place matches, but it's the end of the consolation bracket as well. So more or less, now obviously it varies based on the size of the weight class of the number of athletes in each, but pretty much anybody that competed on day 2 were competing for either placement matches or the chance to be in placement matches. So it adds some eminence to just getting to that point, because it means that you've done very well just to get to that stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year we only had one. Markayla Lottie made it through the second day. This year, same thing. We had one Aaliyah. She made it through the second day, and she ended up placing on the second day. So very, very tough tournament. And a lot of our conference teams were kind of in the same boat. They had a couple through the second day, and I think only one of them had multiple placers. So we're right there competitively with them. But yeah, you alluded to it being a 2-day tournament, just like the national tournament. That's another reason why I love this one so much. There's not too many opportunities where we get 2-day weigh-ins, especially for the one tournament at a time. So again, just kind of getting those experience out of the way with tough competition, and quite frankly, probably even a little bit tougher competition than our national tournament. So we're tested, but we know where we need to go now from all these experiences.
We mentioned Aisha Pearson finishing 3rd in her first collegiate event at the Falcon a couple of weeks ago. How much does it say about Aaliyah Avara in her first collegiate event to get to that second day at an event like this, not just get to that day, but end up placing 5th against some amazing competition across the board, like you said? What does that say about what she has been able to do recently?
Yeah, it's her first opportunity to step on the mat and compete, and she's working on her descent plan to actually go down to 170 for us at some point.
Okay.
So she's, I think the next competition she'll be ready for 191. So she's wrestling up a little bit too. So, but yeah, all those things considered, I was very proud with her performance. She showed that she's willing to compete under any circumstance, and she knows she's going to get after it. And that's just the beginning of what's going to come for her career here at Avila.
It's something that you mentioned to me before, and so that I made sure that I was mentioning it. And if you've just been listening to this, then if you're a savvy wrestling fan, you heard Zach say earlier there were 11 brackets, 11 different individual champions. That obviously is not normally the case. So in Aaliyah's bracket was kind of an experimental one, I guess. It's one that doesn't. It's not in every tournament, to be sure, because it's the 235-pound bracket. Typically, 191 is the highest it gets in women's at this level in our sport. So can you tell us a little bit about how that works, why that was decided, and what kind of, I guess, ramifications that could have in the sport long term?
Yeah. So very good question. Yeah. So right now, the only division in college to sponsor to the 235-pound weight class is the national junior college level right now. So they do have set alones, a weight class for that. Typically, other tournaments, these open tournaments like this, I'd say about half of them are representing this 235-pound weight class. For example, the girl that won the 235-pound weight class here, she was wrestled for Iowa for the Hawkeyes. Sacred Heart, rather, they had a couple, one, maybe two up at that weight class for sure, so another Division I program.
Okay.
So these Division I teams, they're supporting this weight class. Most of the states in high school, they capped out at 225 or 235, so it's very relevant at the high school scene.
Okay.
It's sounding like college wrestling is gearing to kind of shift the weights to get close to that weight class. Maybe not exactly 235, but I'm kind of thinking that they'll shift it up with due time, just because again the numbers kind of say that it would support another weight class up in that range. But yeah, like you alluded, that a lot of these tournaments are already having it, especially all the junior college tournaments are having it already. So, a lot of teams are have girls on the rosters that fit this weight class. So I would seem to believe that sooner rather than later, the weight classes will probably reflect that throughout all the divisions as well.
So I figure there might just be some sort of restructuring, I guess, across the board, where maybe I imagine they'll keep it at 10 because that is such a nice flat number rather than 11, just for a lot of different reasons. I imagine they'll keep 10, but just kind of maybe break around, have the breaking point between all those different categories shift a little bit at some stages so that you get a higher level, a higher upper weight, and then maybe a higher lower weight as well to kind of reflect that balance a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I've kind of ran a little bit of the numbers on the thing to where I think the numbers will fit well nationally at both the high school and the collegiate level. But yeah, they're NWCA and a lot of higher ups in the wrestling community also have been doing that research as well. So they're trying to figure out what is the best spot for the weight classes. And then part of it is just how quickly the sport has grown in the past since we started our program here in the last 3 years. But even looking further than that as well, last 5-10 years, that the sport has exploded. Last year there was a 52% growth at the high school level alone. I think there was 59 college programs started last year as well that supported mostly women's wrestling. Some of those are included men's as well.
That's a huge number.
But yeah, it's just growing, and again at the high school level, even at the lower weight classes, there's not a whole lot that'll fill that 101 weight class. So I could definitely see that could slide up and it's just kind of shift the whole scale up to, like you said, keep it at 10 weight classes is kind of what I'm thinking, and what it'll end up being here someday.
Well, next up for you guys, you have a little bit of time off from competition. I realize that doesn't mean time off, period, but you don't have to compete or get to compete, I guess I should say, until next Thursday when we return to the dual scene. First KCAC duel against Ottawa at Mabee Fieldhouse next Thursday, November 30th. Should be a prize fight on the men's side. We know how amazing their team is on the men's side. Really, really good on the women's side as well. It's such a deep conference on the women's side. There's so many more teams because they've brought in all of those quote-unquote other schools. They're not other schools, though, in women's wrestling. Those are your best schools, teams like Midland and Jamestown, but they're other schools for us because they're not official full members in really any other sport that the KCAC sponsors. So I'm just thinking that Ottawa is really one of the standard bearers in wrestling in terms of our normal contingent of schools, and you get to see them right off the bat. Your first conference duel against Ottawa coming up next week. It's a little ways out, 10 days out from now, but what can you tell us about that and what you're expecting from that event? Yeah,
we're excited for that one as always. It's always a good environment when we're doing Ottawa on both sides. They've got a tough team, as you alluded to. They brought in some tough freshmen this year as well, so I'm looking forward to seeing how we match up against them. But yeah, I think it'll be a competitive matchup. It's just like it always is. Everyone's going to have to do their job on both sides to be able to compete. But I'm pretty certain, or I'm pretty confident that we will be able to compete, and it'll be a good duel. We saw they've been at both the tournaments we have. I think we only saw them 2 or 3 times in a match setting. I think we're split 1-1 right now with them. So if that kind of replicates, I think that's kind of how the duel is going to go as well.
A couple of weeks into this season, year 3 for the program, year 1 for you as the official women's wrestling coach. You got a couple of events, a couple open events, in the books, and the duel against William Woods. You've talked before on this show and in our conversations just privately about how young the team is, how many new girls are on the team, new players to new athletes that are getting a taste of college wrestling for the first time. How would you sum up your first couple of weeks of the season now that a couple of events are officially in the books?
I've been pretty proud of the way things have been going. You know, we've got a lot of compliments from other coaching staff, other officials, just how the girls held themselves accountable and how they interact and how they support each other. So, you know, as a young program, that's important because that's the kind of a great example. It illustrates our culture, which is important for new programs. So we got that part down, and we've wrestling wise, you know, we've had some good wins, we've had some good losses already this year as well too. But again, you know, it's early in the year, and that's why we go to these tough competitions early in the year. See where we're at, see and understand that we can compete with these girls. But the beauty about it is we get 3-4 months to work on it, to correct those mistakes and get better. And so that's why we, you know, start this year off like this with these tough challenges. And you know, we're not going to shy away from any competition at any point because you know, that's what it takes to get us to where we want to be. We're not scared of anybody, and we're gonna come after you. We're gonna put our foot on that mat, and we're gonna give you all we got.
Where is it that you want to be when all is said and done?
Say that again.
Where is it that you want to be when all is said and done?
Well, that's a good question. That's a good, you know, it changes on a daily basis.
Fair enough.
But you know, ultimate goal is the top. Ultimate goal is the top, and you know, top in our conference, top in the NAI, and hopefully someday some of these girls make the world teams and even the Olympic teams. So you know, the sky's the limit, and we're not afraid to work for those goals and aspirations. So one day at a time is all we ask for. You know, best effort, 1 foot forward, and you know. We understand, like you said, we're young and it's going to take time to get there, but we're okay with that. We're not afraid of challenges. We're going to take those head on and try to become the best people we can be.
And the next step towards all those on that path towards all those goals coming up next Thursday, November 30th at Mabee Fieldhouse. Both women's and men's wrestling in action at Mabee next Thursday night. As always, you can watch all the action right here on the Avila Sports Network. It is Thanksgiving week, so I want to take a second to thank a lot of people. Thank you, as always, to Tanner's at Red Bridge for hosting us. Thank you to executive producer Darian Miner for all that he does for this show and all that he's done for me over the last couple of years. Thank you to everybody at Avila Athletics for making this possible. Thank you to head coach Zach Revier for being here with us, and thank you for watching wherever you're watching us from. We'll see you next week on Eye on the Eagles, same time, same channel, 11:30 a.m. on the Avila Sports Network or after the fact on YouTube. So for all of us, I'm Tim Hackett. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Eye on the Eagles. Until then, so long.